Hey guys, today I'm going to be reviewing yet another Debian-based Linux distribution. This Debian-based Linux distribution is called SolydXK, reading from the SolydXK website. SolydXK is an open source operating system for small businesses, nonprofit organizations, and home users. SolydXK focuses on stability, security, and ease of use and will help new users make the transition from Windows to Linux easier. So a brief history, Solid has been around for a number of years. I've been hearing about it for, 5 or 6 years. I've never actually installed SolydXK on physical hardware or inside a virtual machine. This will be the very first time I've ever actually installed and looked at SolydXK. But I do know a little bit about the history of it. It was started after Linux Mint dropped their Debian Edition. A few years back, Linux Mint had a Debian Edition that was that used the KDE desktop environment, and the Mint guys ended up dropping that project. So, as a continuation of that, some guys took it upon themselves to go ahead and create a Debian-based Linux distribution using the KDE desktop environment, and they called this SolydK. And then shortly after that, Linux Mint also dropped their Xfce edition of the Debian-based edition. So Solid went ahead and created an Xfce edition, which they called SolydX. Hence the name SolydXK. Comes in two different flavors: SolydX with the Xfce desktop environment, SolydK with the KDE desktop environment. For today's review, I'm going to go ahead and install SolydX with the Xfce desktop environment. I will also mention that it says SolydX and SolydK are Debian-based Linux distributions. It doesn't mention what branch of Debian they're based on. I'm assuming it's probably Debian stable, but it could be. It could include some stuff pulled down from testing or unstable. I'm not sure. I can't find any mention on their website of exactly what branch of Debian they're basing this off of. It makes no mention of it being a rolling release or anything, so I'm assuming they're not using testing or unstable. So I'm assuming it's based on Debian stable. We'll see. When I actually get this thing installed, I'm going to see what kind of repos they're connecting to, assuming they're using some Debian repos. So I downloaded the ISO for SolydX. The ISO was 1.5 gigs in size, so kind of a hefty ISO for the Xfce desktop environment. So I'm assuming it comes with quite a bit of software installed by default. Anyway, I've got it loaded up here inside VirtualBox. In the boot menu, we have the options to start SolydX, start SolydX safe, and then we have advanced options. I'm just going to go ahead and choose start SolydX. I'm assuming this is going to put us straight into a live environment. Alright, and it took a minute for the live environment to load up. Really sharp looking live environment here for the SolydX distribution here. Alright, the installer. They have the installer icon right here on the desktop. I like that. Easy to find. It doesn't make me search for an installer, inside some menu system, or even worse, some distributions actually make you open up a terminal to launch an installer. I like just having it right on the desktop. I think that's very user friendly. Alright, so when you launch the installer, we get this warning: no partition tables found on the drive, the virtual drive of this virtual machine. Do you want the installer to create a set of partitions for you? Note, this erases all disk, all data present on the disk. So basically, do we want SolydX to go ahead and create some partitions for us? Yeah, I'm going to let it just do its thing, let it set up the partitions how it wants to. Alright, language. It has chosen English United States for us. That's correct. I'm going to choose forward. It has correctly chosen the central time zone here in the US for us. Keyboard layout, it has correctly chosen English US for the keyboard. I can test that out in this test field. Wow. Wonder why it went to full screen there. Alright. Full name, I'm not going to bother with a full name. I'm just going to call my username SolydX. Password, I'm going to type a simple password that I can remember here for this virtual machine. Log in automatically on system boot. I'm not going to tick that on. I like to be asked for a password when I log in. Then I'm going to go down here and click forward. Alright, now let's see how it set up our partition scheming. It looks like if you let SolydX set up the partitions itself, it's going to create a swap, and it's going to create a swap the same size as the amount of RAM you've given it on your machine, or in my case, the amount of RAM I've given this virtual machine. I gave this virtual machine 6 gigs of RAM. I don't want to create a 6 gig swap. That's just a gigantic swap. So I'm actually going to delete this swap, and I'm going to redo these partitions myself. So I'm going to go down here and I'm going to click the button down here to edit partitions, because it doesn't look like there's any way to edit partitions here in the actual installer. So if I click edit partitions here, it opens up the gparted program, and this will allow me to doctor these a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and delete the swap, and I'm just going to create one extended 4 file system and give it the entire 15 gig hard drive of this virtual machine. Alright, so I deleted that swap partition. Now I just have the one extended 4 file system mounted at root, of course, and it's taking up pretty much the entire 15 gig hard drive. So I'm going to click forward. Then we have our summary of our language, time zone, keyboard layout, username, hostname, and file system. I'm going to click apply. The installer should begin. Probably take 5 to 10 minutes or so for the installer to run. I'm going to pause the recording. Alright, and the installation completed. That just took a few minutes. And now we need to restart the computer to complete the installation. Okay, so I rebooted the machine and logged in here to our Xfce desktop environment, and the first thing I'm greeted with is welcome to SolydXK. And then it has some information about software and support. If I click next on this, we are offered some multimedia codecs that we can install. It's already got ticked on Flash and CSS. All of the multimedia codecs we need for playing multimedia. I need to go down here and click the install button, and that would install. Matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and do this on camera. Of course, we need to give it our root password to install anything. And that's running. Give this a second. Alright, and that took about a minute to install all the codecs we needed. It says the software has been successfully installed. I click OK. Then I click next on this, and we go to the next slide here, business applications. And we have things like GNU Cache and Project Libre. I can go ahead and click install if I want to install these programs. I'm not going to bother installing them. Home applications, this is the next slide, and GIMP, Inkscape, Shotwell, Clementine, Handbrake, PaTV, Kdenlive. Yeah, I would probably install all of these if I was actually installing this on my system. But I'm not going to do that on camera. The next slide is system applications. gparted, VirtualBox, FileZilla are offered for install. I would install all 3 of those programs if this was an actual install on my physical machine. I'm not going to do that in this virtual machine. Games, I'm not a gamer, but I probably still would install Steam on my system. Play on Linux, I wouldn't install that. I don't use Wine. I don't run Windows programs in Linux. It doesn't make sense to me. Why anybody wants to run a Windows-only program inside Linux. You know, I left Windows programs behind years ago. I just roll with free and open source programs that have Linux clients these days. Wine, I'm not interested in it, but I understand why a lot of people need something like Wine, especially new Linux users just coming from Windows. It's kind of hard to leave all the Windows programs behind, you know, because that's all you know is all those Windows programs. But I'm past that point, so I probably wouldn't install Play on Linux. Alright, I'm going to go through the Whisker menu here and see what is installed by default on SolydX. If I go to Settings here, we have our standard settings stuff, About Me, Accessibility, Flash, Appearance, Desktop Display, the File Manager, which this configures the Thunar File Manager, standard file manager in the Xfce desktop. Firewall config, mouse, network, power, preferred applications, printer, yada yada yada. Your standard settings. We also have the Synaptic Package Manager. The Synaptic Package Manager is a GUI front end to the apt package manager. So for those of you that don't want to fool with running apt in the terminal on your Debian or Debian-based installs, the Synaptic Package Manager is a fantastic GUI package manager. Alright, under accessories we have our application finder. We have the bulk rename tool, catfish file search, ClamTK. ClamTK, that is an interesting thing to include by default on a Linux distro. ClamTK is an antivirus program. There are really no Linux viruses out there in the wild, so you don't need an antivirus program on a Linux distro. It is very rare to see a Linux distro actually include an antivirus program on it. It's kind of strange, but Solid did also offer us the option of installing Wine and Play on Linux to install Windows programs inside Linux. And running Windows programs inside Wine, you possibly could get infected with a virus. Of course, they're Windows viruses. They're not going to affect your Linux system. They're going to do absolutely nothing to your computer. But if you happen to share those files or those emails or whatever that get infected with, friends or family that are running Windows, you could pass those viruses on to other people. So I don't think it's a horrible decision to include ClamTK. Also under accessories, we have our clipboard, we have calculator for our calculator, GTK hash and KeyPass. We have LightDM Greeter, which is the login manager. I actually didn't show me logging into the Xfce desktop environment, but our login manager is the LightDM login manager. Lucky Backup. Lucky Backup is a backup utility, really neat for taking snapshots of your system. This is Lucky Backup 0.4.8. So it's a backup and sync application. Great that they include a backup utility by default on SolydX. I really wish every Linux distro included some kind of way to back up the system by default. Alright, also under accessories we have Mousepad, which is the standard text editor in Xfce. Under accessories, we also have our Notes, which is the note-taking app. We have our Run Program command. We have the Screenshot utility, the Sensor Viewer, our Task Manager. Let's see what kind of memory and CPU we're using. CPU is pretty low, what you would expect for Xfce. It's running around 2-3%. Memory usage is kind of high, though. I gave this virtual machine 6 gigs of memory. It's currently using 14% of that 6 gigs of memory. That's a little higher than I would expect for Xfce, so I'm not sure what is using all that memory right now. Alright, back to the menu though. Accessories, finishing out this category. We also have the Thunar file manager, the standard file manager in Xfce. A fantastic, minimal, lightweight file manager. This is Thunar 1.6.11. And also under accessories, we have the Xarchiver for our archive utility for zip, unzip, .xz, .tar, those kind of files. We have xfburn, which is the standard disk burning utility in the Xfce desktop environment for making CDs, DVDs. Alright, under graphics we have our document viewer, we have LibreOffice Draw, we have the Ristretto image viewer, and we have Simple Scan for scanning. Internet. Firefox ESR is our default browser. Firefox ESR, this is 52.5.2, and the solidxk.com homepage is the default homepage for our Firefox here. Also under Internet, Thunderbird is our email client, and then we have the X11 VNC server for sharing your desktop. Multimedia, we have Pulse Audio Volume Control, of course. VLC is installed by default. VLC is our multimedia player for mainly running or watching video, but you can also listen to audio in VLC. Under Office, we have our document viewer again, and then we have the entire LibreOffice suite. We have Base, Calc, Draw, Impress, Math, and Writer all installed by default. Alright, under System, We have our bulk rename utility again. We have the decomp editor. We have our disk usage analyzer. We have the gadmin samba. gdebi, which is a package installer. gdebi is a neat little graphical way of installing .deb files, .debian files. Also under system we have the LightDM greeter again, Lucky Backup again, network, packages for add remove software. Looks like we have our categories over here in the left hand column. We just pick one, such as graphics, and it lists all of the packages and the repos that we could install for this category. Of course, it's got a search field we could search through. Pretty neat that they offer a easy way for app discoverability there. Alright, also under settings we have the package updater. We have print settings. We have our root terminal. This opens up our terminal as the root user instead of as the home user. Sensor viewer again. We have services, the SolydXK system settings. Let me open that up. Okay. It's taking a second here. I thought this would just be like a standard, settings manager, but it looks like it's doing something. Okay. This kind of reminds me of the software and sources utility in Ubuntu. You have driver information, I guess, for installing third-party drivers. We have our repo information. Let me take a look at the repos here, because I was interested in the repos here. They have some SolydXK repos, so I guess Solid is using some of their own repos. They also have a lot of Debian repos listed here. Alright, we have some localization stuff, FS tab, encryption, holdback packages. That's neat that they include an option for that. Cleanup, this cleans up unneeded packages, like orphan packages, packages that serve no point being on your system anymore. And we have our Plymouth Splash here. This is the boot splash theme. Alright, also under system we have the Synaptic Package Manager. System admin, we have the Thunar file manager. Thunar we've already looked at. Also we have time and date. We have a USB creator for creating bootable USB sticks. Our user and group utility, we have the welcome screen that we saw when we first logged in to SolydX. And then we have our terminal, the Xfce terminal. While I have the terminal up, let's see what kernel we're using. 4.9.0 is the kernel for SolydX. This is SolydX 2018-01, so January 2018 is the snapshot for this particular version I'm installing today. Let's see what kind of backgrounds we have to choose from by default. I'm going to right click on the desktop and choose Desktop Settings. And we have a few wallpapers we can choose from. They all look like they have the SolydX logo though. A little bit different coloring. It's really only two wallpapers to choose from. The only difference is some of them are at different screen resolutions, but basically I have this wallpaper to choose from or this one to choose from. That's the only wallpapers I have to choose from. I actually like the lighter one better, so I'm just gonna stick with it. So nothing really installed for wallpapers. We have some menu choices. Under icons here we can tick this on to get our home icon, the file system icon, the trash icon, removable devices, all on our desktop. I don't like having icons on my desktop, but I know a lot of users do, and it's there for you to turn on if you need it. Alright, let's see what kind of theming options we have. I'm going to go to Settings here in the menu. I'm going to click on Appearance. And Appearance, we have our themes here. Open up the file manager again. The default theme was the Breeze X theme, which is nice. That's the Adwaita theme. That's the Adwaita Dark theme. That's actually a pretty nice looking dark theme. If I had a dark frame around the window, that would work with this wallpaper. And we have some other theming options here. Some of them look good, some of them are kind of not that attractive, such as this purplish one. I don't know why anybody would run something like that. Anyway, I'm going to go back to the default Breeze X theme. Pretty cool. Oh, I should have checked out the icons too. Let me open up the file manager again. Let me go back to the appearance program. See what kind of icon sets we have. Oh, by default, we're using the Evolvery flat, vivid, sunken icons. This is a really gorgeous icon set. I got to admit, I probably wouldn't want to change this, but we have the Breeze icons also installed. The Breeze icon set is a beautiful icon set, and that's really all we have is the Breeze and the Evolvery. The other icon sets are your default GNOME icon sets and your default KDE Oxygen theme icon sets. Those are hideous looking icon sets. I wouldn't use either one of those. So I'm going to go back to the Evolvery flat, vivid, sunken icon set. Yeah, that's really gorgeous right there. I'm going to leave that. So there you have it. SolydX, based on Debian. I'm assuming based on Debian stable too. When I checked the kernel, the 4.9 kernel is a older kernel, very stable kernel. It's so I'm assuming they're basing this on Debian stable, not Debian testing or Debian unstable. For sure, those would have much more recent kernels than 4.9. So what are my thoughts on SolydX? It's beautiful. I mean, I love how the look and feel. I love the Xfce desktop environment. Really, Xfce is got everything you want. It's a fully functional desktop environment. It doesn't get in your way. It just works. Rock solid, stable. The installer for SolydX, I'm not sure if they're using their own custom built installer program. I'd never seen that particular installer before, but it was dead simple to use, very straightforward. The only thing is when I had to set up the partitions, there was no way to easily set up the partitions in the installer. It actually has to open up a third-party program of some kind for you to install, or excuse me, for you to set up your partitions. So it launched gparted, so you do have to be familiar with gparted if you want to do any kind of manual partitioning. But other than that, the installer was very easy to use. I give the installer I give the actual Xfce desktop environment, how they've got it all set up, I give that an A+. SolydX, check it out, guys. Peace.